No. There you can.
She's on already.
I wonder which way I should turn. Hi, sorry, we're just about to start. I'm refocusing my person so you can see the stupa.
Mainly Rinpoche's face.
Well, Rinpoche's face, but it has a glow on it though. From the light. I guess that's okay. Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you for your patience. We'll start in just a minute. Right? It looks very nicely well lit, though. I'm sure everyone listening agrees.
No, you don't have more light.
What?
Yeah, you got more light coming.
Oh, more light. I don't know if we need
How's
more
that?
light. Oh, that's good. Okay.
Backlit. It's all
Okay.
right.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Tibet Center, Kunchuk Tardu Ling, a Buddhist meditation and study center located in New York City and northern New Jersey. This is our twice-weekly presentation of the Buddha Dharma. Specifically, this is a talk series entitled Dharamsala Through the Eyes of a Western Nun. All the prayers we say are on the website under the FAQ section. Scroll down to prayers. If there's any problem with the sound or anything else, please let Darren or Tony know. And if there's anyone who you want us to pray for tonight at the end, please put their names in the chat box. And now we'll go to prayers. First is the prayer for the spreading of the Buddhas, of the teachings throughout the length and breadth of the West. By the force of the blessings of the non-fallacious three precious gems, and of the truth of our pure selfless wishes, may the precious Buddhist teachings flourish and spread to the expanse of all areas throughout the length and breadth of the West. For all the people living together with their near ones, who have engaged in the teachings and have faith and respect for them, may all conditions adverse to their practice of the pure Dharma be dispelled, and an excellent collection of favorable conditions increase like the waxing moon. And especially for those who work on the methods to accomplish the spreading of the victorious one's teachings, which are the source of benefit and happiness. May they never be oppressed by masses of interference and adverse conditions, and may this spontaneously happen just as we have hoped and wished. Now for the Heart Sutra. Thus have I heard once. The Blessed One was walking in the royal domain of the Vulture Peak Mountain, together with a big gathering of great monks and bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One entered the Samadhi, where he examines the time noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, looking at the profound practice of transcendent knowledge, saw the five skandhas and their natural emptiness. Then through the inspiration of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to Avalokiteshvara, how should those noble ones learn who wish to profound practice of transcendent knowledge? And Avalokiteshvara answered, Venerable Shariputra, whoever wishes to follow the profound practice of transcendent knowledge should look at it like this, seeing the five skandhas in their natural emptiness. Form is empty, emptiness itself is form. Emptiness is not separate from form. Form is not separate from emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discriminating awareness, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Thus, all dharmas are empty and have no characteristics. They are unborn and unceasing. They are not impure or pure. They neither decrease nor increase. Therefore, since there is emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no discriminating awareness, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no sensation, no objects of mind, no quality of sight, no quality of hearing, no quality of smelling, no quality of tasting, no quality of sensing, no quality of thought, no quality of mind consciousness, There are no nidandas from ignorance to old age and death, nor their wearing out. There is no suffering, no cause of suffering, no ending of suffering, and no path, no wisdom, no attainment, no non-attainment. Therefore, since there is no attainment, the bodhisattvas abide by means of transcendent knowledge. And since there is no obscurity of mind, they have no fear. They transcend falsity and pass beyond the bounds of sorrow. And the Buddhas who dwell in the past, present, and future, by means of transcendent knowledge, fully and clearly awaken to unsurpassed, true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the mantra of transcendent knowledge, the mantra of deep insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequaled mantra, the mantra which calms all suffering, should be known as truth, for there is no deception. In transcendent knowledge, the mantra is proclaimed. Tayatam Om Gate Gate Para Gate Para Sam Gate Bodhi Soha. O Shariputra, is how a bodhisattva mahasattva should learn profound transcendent knowledge. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and praised the bodhisattva mahasattva Avalokiteshvara, saying, Good, good, O son of noble family, profound transcendent knowledge should be practiced just as you have taught, and the Tathagatas will rejoice. And the Blessed One had said this, Shariputra and Avalokiteshvara, that whole gathering with the worlds, with its gods, humans, Asuras, and Gandharvas, their hearts full of joy, praise the One, the Blessed One. And now for refuge and bodhicitta, which we say 3 times. With the wish to free all beings, I shall always go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until I reach full enlightenment. Inspired by wisdom and compassion, today in the Buddha's presence, I generate the mind intent on full awakening for the benefit of all sentient beings. As long as space endures, as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. With a wish to free all beings, I shall always go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until I reach full enlightenment. Inspired by wisdom and compassion, today in the Buddha's presence, I generate the mind intent on full awakening for the benefit of all sentient beings. As long as space endures, as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. With a wish to free all beings, I shall always go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until I reach full enlightenment. Inspired by wisdom and compassion, today in the Buddha's presence, I generate mind intent on full awakening for the benefit of all sentient beings. As long as space endures, as long as sentient beings remain, may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. So thank you everyone for joining. Before we begin, I felt like last time I left you hanging when I mentioned that the 7th water bowl being the one to offer music. I gave no explanation at all. Tisk tisk on me. So what are the 7 water bowl offerings you see on Buddhist altars? And who are they gifts to? They are a gift to all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas who are visualized in front of you. And why do we give these gifts? Of course, out of respect and admiration for them and their perfected qualities. But we also make offerings for our own benefit. We are given this opportunity to make offerings to the Buddha Bodhisattvas, and through that, we will become more generous people. It helps us get accustomed to giving instead of the usual taking. It is a wonderful practice for that. Generosity is very important. Otherwise, it wouldn't be the first of the 6 perfections. Not only is it important, but it can also make you feel happier also. Most people know the saying that it's better to give than to receive. And scientific studies have even been done to show that is true. Giving with your heart makes you feel good. The problem is sometimes if the giving doesn't come from an open heart, then you don't feel that happiness and joy when you give. There are many things that can darken the openness of a giving heart, such as stinginess. When I first started out on the path, I thought of myself as a reasonably generous person. But that was not my natural inclination. It rarely came naturally, not like one of my friends who did it with so much ease and grace. For me, the act of giving was rarely spontaneous, but done more when it was expected. Like if someone gave me a gift, I felt like I then had to give them one. It also didn't help that I was somewhat of a frugal person, which made it difficult to notice that fine line between being frugal and miserliness. But at least I wasn't as bad as the person in that popular story from the Buddha's time. The stingy person asked the Buddha for help in becoming less stingy and more generous. The Buddha told them to put something in one of their hands and then give it to the other hand, and repeating this until it became easy, like that. And so there's a few variations to the story. In one, the person gives a stone, in another, some food, in another, some jewels. The person had difficulty at first, just being able to give something from one hand to another. But later they got so comfortable, they were able to give things to others without feeling any stinginess or regret. So good for them. Yay. To avoid the feeling of stinginess, the main and traditional offering is water. And here we have some water. It's free, well, free-ish, and easy for most of us to get. I'm guessing that if you are amongst the nearly 1 billion people that live in the desert or other places that need to walk miles to get clean water, something else could be used, such as sand. The point is not to make this more difficult than it needs to be. Giving is hard enough for some to do, including myself. There isn't supposed to be more added stress making these offerings. Meaning it shouldn't turn into a drag. Oh no, it's time to make offerings. I have to drive to the store and get that special water, but it's so expensive, so now I first have to go to the bank. Answer being, use the type of water you drink, be it tap water or filter water, unless you really want to use that special water and go out for a drive. The water is then poured into 7 bowls and placed in front of the altar. These represent 7 items that were given to house guests in India at the time of the Buddha. The first was water for drinking, as the guest might have walked some ways in the heat and arrived thirsty. The next was water for bathing, mostly for the feet, as many people then walked barefoot. The third is my favorite, flowers. Similar to the idea of Hawaiian leis, in India, guests were given flowers as a greeting, which was very symbolic of respect. The next gift was incense, which gave the guest a pleasant olfactory experience. And the fifth was perfume or rosewater. The next was delicious food, as what guest doesn't want some food, especially after a long journey. And the seventh was music for the guests' entertainment. When pouring the water, these objects are imagined. It's good to give the best of the best, and in multitudes if possible. If you can imagine giving one flower, why not thousands, millions, filling the universe? Imagine food with hundreds of delicious flavors, or your favorite sandwich. If you like hip-hop, opera, or other pleasing sounds of nature, give that. Make it fun and personal, and this helps create a special connection with the act of giving. At first, I found visualizations difficult, which made me not want to do them. It took me some time to make the experience my own. By focusing on the abundance of the visualized gifts, I started to enjoy it. Being an admirer of astronomy, I imagine, as the lamb rim text suggests, offering incense with a divine scent that covers the whole galaxy. Or try and visualize offering beautiful flowers and gems going out to infinity, past the boundaries of the universe. When mentally offering food, I have to be a little more careful and not go overboard. Otherwise, it would make me hungry and distract me. I was fine just imagining my favorite fruits, such as custard apples and persimmons, but never chocolate mousse cake. I tried really hard not to get lazy and offered things in different arrangements each day. No one wants the same tie for their birthday each year. Plus, being creative makes it more interesting and helps keep attention and focus. It is so easy to lose focus when you're bored. As for the 4% of the world with aphantasia who can't imagine, this process is more difficult. It's my understanding that they cannot visualize in their mind. If this is the case, then just use a verbal equivalent, such as with this gift of flowers, I make offerings, which should be done by everyone anyway. Maybe add a little extra verbal detail to each offering to make it more interesting, such as I pour this pure water of 8 qualities: cool, delicious, light, soft, crystal clear, free of impurities, clears the throat, and soothing to the stomach. What initially confused me, I should have started that sentence before. What initially confused me was although these are called the 7 water bowl offerings, the description included 8 offerings. Being a lover of mystery, I had to hunt down the missing bowl. Lo and behold, it was for light. In some cases, the bowl for light is there, but not the one for music, as sound is not visible. In other cases, the music bowl is not there, but not the one for light, as there is an actual light offering, such as a light bulb, over the altar, which is always kept on, such as here. Light represents the Buddha's wisdom, attained when he became enlightened. This wisdom dispels the darkness of confusion and ignorance. Just like in an old house that has been abandoned for hundreds of years, once light is turned on, the darkness disappears and is gone forever. Of course, at that time of the Buddhas, there was no turning on light bulbs. Instead, there were butter lamps. These were made up of clarified butter poured into a container, much like a small chalice with a wick in it. Keeping up with this tradition, butter lamps are used as offerings and sometimes in the scale of hundreds or thousands. In India, the Tibetan Buddhists have small rooms with nothing but butter lamps being offered to illuminate the world. The gift of light is very popular and widespread in other Buddhist traditions also. In Thailand, during a ceremony to commemorate the teachings of the Buddha, thousands of practitioners offer lighted lanterns for world peace. Way to go, people! Knowing that millions of other Buddhists are making beautiful offerings all over this world really inspires me. So go team sentient beings. When I initially became a Buddhist and read about the practice of water bowl offerings, it sounded so beautiful and simple, something that could bring me a sense of inner calmness to my life. Then I set up my first altar and correction, it all sounded simple and calming on paper. At the beginning, I could rarely remember which bowls represented what, and I had to keep referring to my notes, which made me then spill. There were so many chances for spilling. None of the bowls can be put right side up until they have a little bit of water in them. Otherwise, it's like giving a gift of an empty box. You start with all bowls being empty and upside down. Then you first fill one. From it, you pour a small amount of water in all the other bowls and then go back and fill them all completely. One article said to pour the water so it doesn't make a sound. No glug, 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 glug. So I tried, but as my first set of bowls were so small, there wasn't time for a lot of noise, except when I spilled and then swore. Another book remembered pouring the water slowly at the beginning and then fast and then back to slow at the end when the bowls were nearly full. Of course, I tried it with not much success. I had to really concentrate, but there wasn't enough time. I just squeezed it into my morning rush of getting ready and catching the 6:22 a.m. train. Adding so much time pressure just put me in panic mode. My heart was nowhere to be found, overshadowed by focusing on just getting it done. Making offerings to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas should be like giving gifts to someone you admire and hold in high regard. It seems rude to rush and make a mess of things. I couldn't expect to generate feelings of generosity or an inner sense of calmness the way I was doing it. So I called the timeout. Time for a do-over. I couldn't make offerings after work, as the water bowls are supposed to be done first thing in the morning. It helps start the day on a positive note, being generous and showing respect. I didn't need help after work putting my life in a positive note because I was just so happy to be home. Plus, after work was the time the water bowls should be emptied. So I altered my schedule in the morning and made more time. You might say, oh, big whip-de-doo. But adding 30 minutes in the morning was huge for me. It was the first time I actually gave up sleep for something. Well, besides catching a plane. I still spilled water, but at least I swore less. My usual tendency of making things more difficult for myself than necessary, such as attempting the impossible, started to lessen. Of course, I couldn't pour the water slowly, then fast, and then back to slow again, as my water bowls were barely larger than thimbles. Plus, this was all very new to me. I couldn't expect to do it perfectly. Dropping that unhelpful pressure allowed me to add some lightness to it, opening a space for my heart to get involved. Of course, over time, my bowls grow larger. My bowls grew larger. I bought larger bowls. The ones I have now, I bought in a shop inside His Holiness's the Dalai Lama's monastery area, Namgyal Monastery in Cloud Ganj. Since I've been in India, each time I get something new for my altar or practice, I take it to the temple room where His Holiness teaches, or walk it around the Kora, which makes me feel like it has been automatically blessed. Yay! So now we return. To recap from last week, I had just decided to become a nun. It had been some time coming, but I suddenly felt truly ready. But you can't just go out and buy a nun outfit and shave your head and be done with it. First, you need to get approval from a lama who is willing to perform the ceremony along with 3 other monks. I first decided to ask Gashi Lakdor, the director of the school my school, for advice as well as to get information on the process. I told him I was interested in becoming a nun, and he said, "Great idea." I was completely shocked. I heard from other nuns that they sometimes make you wait a bit and let you ask 2 to 3 times to ensure you are ready. He also added a somber note at the end. It would be a shame if I disrobed. In other words, gave up being a nun. Of course, I agreed. There is a high turnover rate of Western nuns. Not that I've done a survey, but the abbess of Thosming Nunnery showed me a picture of about 25 nuns or so from around 2004. She said that about 70% had disrobed since then. So not great odds. But I felt confident that it wouldn't happen to me. That Capricorn goat in me just wouldn't let it happen, being stubborn. Rationally stubborn, of course. He then mentioned the one showstopper to it all, the showstopper. My parents had to agree. I couldn't help but blurt out, "Really? Once you have some gray hair, I just assumed you didn't need your parents' approval for anything." Eek! My only child alarm went off. My parents are very open-minded and broad-minded, but I think my mom especially wanted to see me in a wedding gown. For a tiny itsy bitsy split second, I wondered if I could just not ask and say they said yes, and then I could just explain it later when I saw them in person. Of course, I wouldn't do that. One, talk about starting off on the wrong foot. And two, definitely not a white lie, so I would be breaking a previously taken Pradamoksha vow. But it is funny, sometimes that little black devil on your left shoulder comes out of nowhere just for the fun of it, even though it's been banished for years. So for now, I put asking my parents on the back burner for at least a couple of weeks. I wanted to get Chungla Rinpoche's consent, so I also wrote him an email asking for his permission. Sadly, I was a few hours too late, and he had just passed that morning. But I felt like he would have agreed. Geshe Lakdor knew how close I felt to Rinpoche. I felt indebted to him for my initial connection to Buddhism, as well as to my return. So Geshe Lakdor often mentioned his closeness to him, repeating many times, I personally knew Rinpoche very well, which made me feel closer to Rinpoche. I was still excited about my decision, but wanted to feel more like a nun right away. So I bought my first nun article of clothing. For me, the most important and fun part of any outfit has always been the handbag. So I bought my first monk bag. It made me feel my path of a nun had already started, and I proudly hung it up in my room. Geshe Lakdor was unable to do the ceremony, so he advised me to ask Jada Rinpoche, as I had met him already and recently in Woodside, Queens. As to finding Jada Rinpoche, the only hint he gave me was that he might still have a room in Namgyal Monastery, where he used to be the abbot. I did find his room. I left notes on the door for when he came back and sent emails. He travels a lot, in fact, most of the year, giving teachings and empowerments. But finally, I met him. He was initially hesitant until I mentioned that I was a student of Chungla Rinpoche. You could tell they were friends, and he had great respect for him, as right away he said yes. But he still didn't seem very excited about performing the ceremony. His attendant and translator were going to call me in a couple of weeks to let me know which day. I took that as a yes to becoming ordained. So off I went to the fabric shop in Lower Dharamsala marketplace and got enough fabric for the skirt called the shendup, the shirt with capped sleeves with blue piping called the dongka, and the wrap called the zen. Then off to the tailor's. I hadn't yet found a ready-made shop for monastics. What also wasn't ready-made was my asking my parents. I think my mom had seen it coming for a while, but it was still a surprise to both of them. They both said, oh, well, maybe you can wait another year. I took that as a no. I figured I would let them brew for a while, and sure enough, they came around the next day. Phew, what a relief. Now I had the green light. Wow, becoming a nun, a big step, and now I was officially on my way to doing it. I was happy, but quite nervous. When I'm in those sort of moods, feeling a bit fragile, I meditate on compassion. Meditating on compassion is a wonderful thing to do for the world and for yourself. For me, it fixes any mood I'm in. Plus, it has a calming effect and grounds me in the Dharma. It puts me back into feeling right. It just goes to show the Beatles are right with all you need is love. Well, love and compassion. It always tickles me pink that Buddha proves that. As His Holiness says, often, when you boil down the Dharma, you get compassion. As Shantideva says about bodhicitta, which is derived from compassion, it is the great sun that finally removes the misty ignorance of the world it is the quintessential butter from the churning of the milk of Dharma. When I meditate on compassion, I sometimes visualize certain people, sometimes someone who is hurting me, other times a stranger that I saw on the street. But usually I meditate on a fellow at my last job, Bruce, who I found difficult to work with, but I still liked him. He was super smart, but fraught with anxiety. I would usually meditate trying to generate love and care for him, as much love and care as I have for myself, if not more. But this day I tried something new. During my meeting with Geshe Lakdor, he told me that meditation on interdependence can lead to feeling great compassion. At first, I didn't understand. The steps were meditate on interdependence to understand emptiness, and from there, one can automatically generate compassion. It was through understanding interdependence based on labeling, that you can realize emptiness. And from that, one understands that all sentient beings lack inherent existence, just as we do. This can then lead to feeling tremendous compassion for all. Interdependence in this case is based on labeling, meaning I am dependent on you to label me, and vice versa. Like this pen is dependent on you to label it pen. And that's the only thing that makes the pen exist, is the labeling of it. In other words, it's merely imputed by mental labeling. So I started my meditation with how me and Bruce were interdependent. I was dependent on him to be labeled and therefore to exist, and vice versa. I came up with the incorrect but still warm and fuzzy idea that if I labeled him compassion instead of Bruce, then he would become compassion and not Bruce. Then he would no longer be full of fear and anxiety. The thought that he would be happy, full of love, peace, and compassion made me cry. During my sobs, Jada Rinpoche called and said he would be very honored to ordain me, and it was going to happen in 3 days. 3 days? Eek! Panic time. I still had a few things I needed to get, like coffee. I'm just kidding. I spoke to another nun, and she told me I would also need a yellow wrap to wear over my maroon wrap called a chogu. I doubt I'm saying that correctly. It was to be worn when attending teachings, and definitely to be worn during ordination. The design of it actually comes from the Buddha himself. When the Buddha's disciples asked how the chogu should be made, the Buddha replied, it should look like a field of Magadha. Magda, which I looked up, was the name of the region where the Buddha lived, and the fields there were divided into patches with crops in each. In the case of the chogu, the patches were made of old yellow fabric sewn together. His Holiness elaborated that the patches and poor quality of the material used for the robes is indicative of detachment from worldly goods. It is, if it was of one piece and of good quality, you could sell it and gain something. No, no, no. As it's made of many small patches, or nowadays sewn to look like it's made of small patches, it is very difficult and time-consuming to sew. There is no way a tailor could make one in 3 days. Luckily, I was told about a shop in McLeod Ganj that sold them ready-made. But the store owner only had nam jars, which are the same as a chogu, but are much bigger and just for the special occasions such as ordinations. Perfect, except it was much heavier and bigger and bulkier for traveling. Otherwise, I would be wearing one now. I have seen other geshes and geshima teachers not wearing them while teaching, so I figure it's okay that I am not. I also needed a square maroon mat with little triangles, which I brought with me. I'm not sitting on it now, obviously, because I wouldn't be able to show you. I have little triangles at the end. You'll see them during this. I was supposed to sit on it during the ceremony, and it's called a dingwa. You might see monks and nuns sitting on them at teachings. The main use is for a mat for meditation. It was initially used to not disturb the ground underneath you. The triangles here look like the ears of little animals, which indicate that the monk or nun sitting on it is there to hear the troubles and problems of others. There is also a band in the middle, which I'll show you here. There's the band, which is open on one side. This open side is to be placed towards the front, as its purpose is to catch the blessings, much like how you present katas to a lama. While we are on the subject, katas are the white scarves offered on the arrival of a High Lama, after teachings from a High Lama, or sometimes offered and left in front of sacred statues or locations. Actually, you do see them in other colors, such as blue and yellow, like this one. Yay! When presented to a High Lama, they are folded in half lengthwise to present the interweaving of the giver's and receiver's lives, their interdependence, how everything and every action we do is dependent on something else. Without a teacher, there is no student. Without a student, there is no teacher. There is no such thing as a teacher, as it is merely mental labeling. If there is no inherently existent teacher or student, then there is nothing. Without one, the other doesn't exist. Same with a kata. It needs the giver as well as the receiver. In dependence on the kindness of the Lama giving the teaching and the respect of the student towards the teacher, the kata arises. The open edges should be faced towards the teacher like this. Here, you can see the open edges. That is to receive the blessings. And the folded section is always pointing you, representing your open heart, open and pure heart. This is actually the kata given to me during my ordination that I plan to leave in Bodh Gaya on my upcoming pilgrimage. Another nun told me a bit more about the significance of this top, the donka, specifically the legend about the blue trim on the side. It's a shame we don't have popcorn for this one. It's a very nice story. It all started in the 9th century when the fully ordained Sangha nearly came to full extinction. At that time, Tibet was run by a grandson of the famous Tenzin Karuna, who was one of the 3 kings that established Buddhism in Tibet. This king's name was Tritsuk Tenzin. He was extremely devoted to the teachings of the Buddha and is famous for having built 1,000 temples. Sadly, he was assassinated by his older brother, King Longdarm, who tried really, really hard to wipe out Buddhism and nearly succeeded. During his long and horrible reign, he had all monks either killed or forced to disrobe, except for 3 lucky ones who escaped and fled the area. During their travels, these 3 met a herdsman who asked to become a monk. The problem is they couldn't give him full monk's vows, as 5 monks were required to give full ordination. Well, now it's 3, but still, then it was 5. Therefore, they could only give him novice vows, and the novice name, Gewan Rabsel. They then heard that Pelgi Dorji was in the area and asked him for help. He was a famous student of Guru Rinpoche, Patna and was well known for being able to pass freely through rocks and fly from mountain to mountain. But he was unable to perform ordinations as he had just killed someone, the evil King Longdarma. Of course, being a highly realized practitioner, he did this in order to save Buddhism and to stop the evil king from committing even more non-virtues, saving him from a really long stay in the hell realms. Not being able to help them, he instead promised to help locate other monks. And he found 2 Chinese monks who then joined the group. They were then able to give full ordination to the herdsman, who could now be called Gongpa Rabsel. At that time, the Chinese monks wore some blue garments. Blue is the color of the sky, indicating that the heart should be like this, and then you will progress. To show gratitude for the 2 Chinese monks, the monks added a blue cord trim to the donka. Then the lineage flourished. Yay, another happy ending. As for the base color of the top of the donka, it can be maroon or maroon and yellow. Traditionally in Galupa, maroon or red and yellow donka are only worn by those who receive their geshe or geshima degree. In some ways, the donka is actually it's a recent addition to monastic robes. At the time of the Buddha, all the monks dressed in the style of the Theravadas with no top underneath. The donka came into existence during the 14th century at the time of Tsongkhapa because it's very cold in Tibet. It is said that under the arms in the back, I would turn around, the cut of the cloth looks like 2 elephants' trunks, but I doubt you can see it. But anyway, there's a little square section here in the back and on the side, and that is to represent that's to represent the Lord of Death. We're always reminded of the impermanence of life as we are sitting in the jaws of death. To be honest, I wish I could always be reminded of impermanence, but it's hard to keep it in mind. Just as Shantideva verse in his Bodhisattva Way of Life, the 7th chapter on joyous effort or enthusiasm says, "Enmeshed in the snare of disturbing conceptions, I have entered the snare of birth. Why am I not still aware that I live in the mouth of the Lord of Death?" I think most of us are aware that death will come, but we don't like thinking about death, so we don't. I like to think of it as a contemplation is the mother of all motivators. It is important to be careful not to get stuck on the, oh no, I'm going to die, though, because this can be quite depressing. I use it more like Benjamin Franklin's famous quote, "Don't put off tomorrow what can be done today," with its emphasis on not knowing what tomorrow brings. It can be very inspiring and useful during times of procrastination. And anyone with an outdoor project and an iffy rain forecast applies this idea. Anyway, back to the donka. The 2 shoulders represent a lion's mane. The lion is the king of beasts who has no fear of other beings, remaining relaxed and peaceful. The same is said for anyone following the Vinaya, meaning all monks and nuns. They no longer need to fear the suffering of continual rebirths because they are on the path to liberation. But don't worry, even though you aren't ordained, just by you being here, you have nothing to fear, as you are also on the path headed towards liberation. So yay for everyone. Let's take a moment to rejoice for everyone. And we'll have another sip of water. While researching the subject of attire, I found out a bit more about those big yellow hats monks wear during the teaching sometimes. The ones that look like grand yellow mohawks. I've always been curious about these. The yellow presents the purity of the teachings, similar to how gold is considered pure and free of stains. Purity or virtuous is also the literal meaning of Galup or Galuk, our tradition, which was started by Je Tsongkhapa. The Galupas, those following the Galuk tradition, are considered the virtuous ones. The hat is worn during special ceremonies. The bottom part is yellow and has a handle in the back with two other handles. Inside it's white, symbolic of Chenrezi, the Buddha of compassion. The handle inside that is blue, which is symbolic of Vajrapani, the Buddha of power. And the handle outside is reddish orange, symbolizing Manjushri, the Buddha of wisdom. All of these represent Je Tsongkhapa, who is the emanation of all three, Chenrezi, Vajrapani, and Manjushri. As for the mohawk part, the many threads standing upright, they represent the thousands of Buddhas of this age on top of the person's head. I've heard several teachers say that it's good to visualize your teacher or the Buddha on top of your head throughout the day. It keeps you mindful during the day, as well as increasing your feeling of connection and admiration for them. In one of my classes at the library, our teacher mentioned that Shantideva kept all sentient beings on his head. Boy, that must be heavy. Or was it his heart? Anyway, this helped him to maintain his bodhisattva motivation throughout the day. Keeping all sentient beings in mind when you do something helps you also reduce your pesky and harmful self-cherishing attitude. If you're doing things for others, it means you aren't doing it just for yourself. It's good to get in this habit. It frees you up and lightens your burdensome load. Anyway, enough about the garments. Back to my 3-day to none countdown. Next was the big task for me, the hardest task, getting my head shaved. I was to have the barber leave just a small clump of hair on the top to be cut at the time of the ceremony. I think women might take this one a bit harder than men. Women, on the whole, have more stress put on their looks, and hair is a big part of that. Luckily, I had started preparing for this sometime earlier and had begun to put my hair up and spend less time fussing over it. Plus, over the past couple of years, I had started to feel more self-confident and also felt less of a need to wear lots of makeup. It's one thing if you like wearing makeup, but another thing if you're doing it as you don't think you look pretty. I thought my self-confidence was good enough to withstand not having any hair. So I sat reasonably calmly in the barber's chair. I have to admit, it still felt really weird, but I came away feeling good. And now I actually like this look better. I know monastics aren't supposed to care about their looks, but it's a habit I can't just quite drop overnight. It has lessened. It's funny that recently my attachment to my looks, or to looks in general, inspired a Trader Joe's cashier. She was asking me about my robes, and half kiddingly, I told her I was a bit jealous of the Korean and Vietnamese nuns, as they get to wear my favorite color, gray. I used to love wearing gray. The cashier turned and said it was great to meet a Buddhist fashionista. I think it's good to connect to as many people to Buddhism as you can and on their terms, be it cutely old-fashioned or modern. So now I was all more or less ready. Well, kind of. The problem is I had no idea how to put on the skirt. The skirt, the shendap, is actually circular. You need to step into it and then fold it in a certain way. Luckily, I got some help. Oh, now I'm going to show you. Yay. So first, there's 3 folds on the left. Hold on. Yes, here they are. Well, more or less folds. You can see them here. They represent the 3 jewels of refuge. In another reference, they also represent the three aspects of the path: renunciation, conventional bodhicitta, the wish to become enlightened for the sake of all beings, and the wisdom understanding emptiness, ultimate bodhicitta. And then here on the left, on the front, facing backwards, you can see here, there's a fold facing back, and that's to represent leaving behind ordinary life as well as all negative afflictions and actions. And the fold facing forwards, this represents moving forward or following the Buddhist path, as well as engaging in virtuous actions. By the way, I was very glad that I added this information to my teachings, as these are points I should be remembering each morning when I put on my robes. Sometimes I take these robes for granted, which is a terrible thing and something I want to change. So thank you for the inspiration. Each time I remember, I will dedicate that merit to all of you. It's important not to take the Dharma for granted. We might get to a place in our practice where we feel so comfortable that we start to lack appreciation or gratitude for it. It becomes like an old shoe. But as the Scottish writer Alexander McCall Smith points out, old shoes tend to not be supportive. It is easier to stumble and sprain an ankle while wearing an old pair of shoes. It's good to be comfortable in your practice, but always keep your appreciation and gratitude strong. That way you keep your practice alive and growing.
Well said.
Oh, thank you, Tony. So the big day was yeah. The big day was here. The ceremony was to take place at 3 p.m. on July 4th. That morning, I went to class in my robes, but I was nearly late to class as it took so long to put them on. I had a lot of difficulty in putting them on, and at some point, I got upset and started to grumble. Silly skirt, why does it have to be so large? 5 reasonably sized people could fit in this. As usual, blaming the outside world for my difficulties. Of course, I knew it was just because it was my first time doing it that it was difficult, and in time it would become easier. But I got too wrapped up in the moment. I was able to be patient for a while, but then I started to feel really unhappy and frustrated. Then I looked for something to make me feel better. Ah, here comes the sweet, sweet smell of blame. It's not your fault, it's someone else's. Ah, some relief. Boy, that self-cherishing attitude can be so spineless. It can't even take several minutes of difficulty. It did help to know that other nuns found putting on the shendup difficult, especially on the first time. One nun even confessed that she cried as she had such a tough time of it. At first, I felt a oneness with all nuns and monks putting on their robes for the first time, which naturally gave me support. I was so relieved and happy when I got it on. But was that enough happiness for me? No. My self-cherishing wanted more and more. Once I had a bit of an upper hand on the situation that had upset me, I mentally slammed it to the nun who cried. We were Dharma friends, but I had said something during our first meeting that she didn't like, and since then, our relationship has always been strained. This was my chance. Ha! I'm better than her. I didn't cry, and she did. Even in just one blink of an eye, all of this happened. It just goes to show how good it is to try to slow things down so you can be mindful of what you are thinking. Sometimes just doing that can lessen your negative thoughts. All of these super quick mental events just showed me how slippery the self-cherishing attitude is. I left it at that. Instead of beating myself up about my non-virtuous thoughts, once they were over, I quickly blamed the self-cherishing attitude. The attitude wouldn't even give me a break on the day I was becoming a nun. I think this is where people brought up in Buddhist families have a better grounding. They don't blast themselves internalize and make everything personal. They know self-cherishing is to blame, whereas many Westerners tend to turn it inwards and make ourselves feel terrible. At least I do. I guess I can't talk for everyone. Oh, I'm so bad for having those thoughts. I can't believe I had those thoughts on the day I'm becoming a nun. I am so unworthy. Ha! Bull pucky. But if I had continued with that type of attitude, I might have grown into self-hatred and low self-esteem. I had to remember it's not me, it's a self-cherishing attitude that does that. And that type of behavior is unacceptable. Self-cherishing, you're fired. Out with you, I say. So we'll leave it at there.
Good.
Okay.
Excellent.
Yay. So anyone?
Darren, do we have names?
Charles, always good.
Charles Osgood?
Oh, thank you. Okay, thank you. I'm sorry? Okay.
Sutra of the Recollection.
Oh, sorry. Sutra of the Recollection of the Three Noble Jewels. Let's say it slow because
Okay.
I ended too early.
No.
Sorry. I prostrate to the omniscient one. Thus the Buddha Bhagavat, Tathagata Arhat Samyak Sambuddha, the learned and virtuous one, the Sugata, the knower of the world, the charioteer and tamer of beings, the unsurpassable one, the teachers of devas and humans, Buddha Bhagavat. The Tathagata is in accord with all merit. He does not waste the virtue. He is completely ornamented with patience. He is the basis of the treasures of merit. He is adorned with the minor marks. He blossoms with the flowers of the major marks. His activity is timely and appropriate. Seeing him is without disharmony. He brings true joy to those who long with faith.
His knowledge
And be overpowered. His strength cannot be challenged. He is the teacher of all sentient beings. He is the father of bodhisattvas. He is the king of noble ones. He is the guide to those who journey to the city of nirvana. He possesses immeasurable wisdom. He possesses inconceivable confidence. His teachings are completely pure. His melody is pleasing. One never has enough of seeing him. His form is incomparable. He is not stained by the realm of desire. He is not stained by the realm of form. He is not affected by the formless realm. He is completely liberated from suffering. He is completely and utterly liberated from the skandhas. He is possessed with dhatus. His ayatanas are controlled. He has completely cut the knots. He is completely liberated from extreme torment. He is liberated from craving. He has crossed over the river. He is perfected in all the wisdoms. He abides in the wisdom of the Buddha Bhagavat, who arise in the past, present, and future. He does not abide in nirvana. He abides in the ultimate perfection. He dwells on the bhumi where he sees all sentient beings. All these are the perfect virtues of the greatness of the Buddha Bhagavat. The Holy Dharma is good at the beginning, good in the middle, and good at the end. Its meaning is excellent. Its words are excellent. It's uncorrupted, is completely perfect, and completely pure. It completely purifies. The Bhagavat teaches the Dharma well. It brings complete vision. It is free from sickness. It is always timely. It directs one further. Seeing it fulfills one's purpose. It brings discriminating insight for the wise. The Dharma, which is taught by the Bhagavat, is revealed properly in the Vinaya. It is renunciation. It causes one to arrive at perfect enlightenment. It is without contradiction. It is pithy. It is trustworthy and puts an end to the journey. As for the Sangha of the great Yana, they enter completely, they enter insightfully, they enter straightforwardly, they enter harmoniously, they are worthy of veneration, join palms. They are worthy of receiving prostrations. They are a field of glorious merit. They are completely receiving all gifts. They are an object of generosity. They are a great object of complete generosity. The protector who possesses great kindness, the omniscient teacher, the basis of ocean of merit and virtue, I prostrate to the Tathagata. Pure cause of freedom from passion, virtuous liberating from the lower realms. This alone is the supreme ultimate truth. I prostrate to the Dharma, which is peace. Having been liberated, they show path to liberation. They are fully dedicated to the disciplines. They are a holy field of merit and possess virtue. I prostrate to the Sangha. I prostrate to the Buddha, the teacher. I prostrate to the Dharma, the protector. I prostrate to the Sangha, the community. I prostrate respectfully and always to these three. The Buddha's virtues are inconceivable. The Dharma's virtues are inconceivable. The Sangha's virtues are inconceivable. Having faith in these inconceivables, therefore the fruition inconceivable. May they be pure and around. And that was for Charles Osgood and everyone else.
Thank you very much.
So thank you very much, everyone.
Venerable Karuna,
And
thank you.
Sending waves of love to all of you. Thank you.
You can do it there.